welcome to this episode of The Complete Advisor. Peter, I just jumped right in, man.
Okay, good.
So we are here. I'm very excited with our guest today, and I'll introduce Peter here in just one second. But our topic, if you're a financial advisor, if you've been in this business for any length of time, one thing you have probably considered, or if you're in your car on, like, say, a Saturday morning, and you're on an AM channel, the odds are that you've heard a financial professional, financial advisor, someone with their practice on the radio.
Almost certainly.
And so we're always looking. You've probably, if you've never jumped into it, you've probably thought, well, that radio seems interesting. Maybe you've looked into it. Maybe the conventional wisdom is like, that is ridiculously expensive. But today, we have the opportunity to talk to a financial advisor that knows this segment. And I've tentatively, my working title for this episode, Peter, is radio dead?
It'll never be dead.
It'll never be dead. Okay, so
I'll give you one word as to why.
Tell me.
Preppers.
Oh, nice. Okay, before you continue on that, our guest today, Peter Rochon, out of North Carolina.
Yep.
And say the city again.
Fuquay-Varina.
Fuquay-Varina.
You know a local immediately by how they say the name of the town. And telemarketers, it's easy. Hey, can you spell the name of the town? Well, it's Fuquay.
Oh,
right?
I wouldn't have got that.
Yeah, so they get the FU, and usually that's the end of it.
They get the FU, you get the FU. Well, nice. Okay, so our topic, is radio dead? You just said one word. It'll never be dead, but
Preppers. They don't tell you to have your cell phone available in case the power goes out to get emergency communications.
This is true.
Right? It's radio. You have to have that radio. Radio is immediate. It's universally available without paying for it.
Interesting comment. We're going to come back to that.
It is local, so you can get those kind of updates. Bad traffic.
Yeah.
You tune into radio to get that immediately. And yeah, GPS is now showing you, hey, there's a traffic jam ahead. You may want to reroute, right? But if you're tuned into radio, you get that word that, hey, it's backing up on I-40 or I-95. You may want to, and you can plan ahead of time, even if you don't have that GPS, or even before the GPS really might alert you.
Yeah.
Weather. So radio is live and local and immediate, better than any other kind of medium.
Let's back you up for just a second. Tell me about let's talk about your radio bona fides.
Yeah.
Hit us up with it.
So there's actually something called National Radio Day, where everybody who's been in radio posts all the stations that they have been on in their career. And
Nice.
I've got a resume that pretty much will battle almost anyone out there. I've been on over 150 stations across the country.
Nice.
So you listing out all the call letters, it's a pretty long list. But I really started my career when I was about 8. And I used to call up to the local radio station and bother them until they let me introduce an upcoming song. And then I'd sit there and I'd record the station on my tape deck, and then I'd edit the tape decks back and forth. And I had a whole tape of me being a radio DJ. So took radio production classes in high school and through college, video and audio production classes.
Yeah.
Pretty much because I loved music as a kid, but I ended up in talk radio out of college and was the program director, operations manager for 4 talk stations simultaneously, and then the morning and afternoon drive time producer for one of North Carolina's largest AM heritage blowtorch talk stations, 680 WPTF. So started an online streaming station back before anybody knew what online or streaming was. So this was in like the early 2000s, 2002, 2003. I had an online streaming music station where we would go out to clubs and record bands that were playing live and then rebroadcast them later so that the band could get all the rest of the fans who couldn't show up to the club to tune in and listen. And then also did a more professional version called stategovernmentradio.com, where we interviewed state legislators, and political action committees and stuff would pay to sponsor different program segments.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's still a love, but through that, I actually ended up hosting all of that weekend lineup of financial infomercials that you started with, right? And in a large area of the the Carolinas, if you've heard one of those shows, I probably produced it at some point in time.
Get out. That's awesome.
And then ended up helping advisors across the country to produce their financial infomercials, their retirement planning radio programs.
When did you? I'm so curious. And so when did you decide to I'm doing radio, and you're working with financial advisors? When did you make the crossover?
I was doing a program called Triangle in Touch with lawyers, doctors, dentists, chiropractors. It was a daily 2 hours of daily talk with different specific professionals.
Wow.
And it ended up being a number of them were financial shows. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I actually enjoyed it. I had a knack for it. Humbly as possible, I knew more than several of the advisors that I was hosting the shows for. And that your earning potential in radio can be quite limited at a very early stage in your career. And I was told so. That my career had, my earning potential had probably plateaued in the Raleigh market. And I was told in the kindest way possible that I needed to go to New York or Chicago or LA, but that's not what I wanted to do. So I actually made a little bit of a transition in my career path, and I was continuing to produce the radio shows for financial advisors, but got licensed myself and became a financial advisor myself starting in 2006. So right before the Great Recession, it was a great time to be an insurance licensed individual because everybody with the insurance products or annuities didn't lose anything that they invested in the Great Recession. But then 2009 through 2013, everybody's like, well, why am I now not making anything? And I realized you really need a balance of both. But the entire time, I'm talking about these topics and important strategies for savers and investors on air, on the radio.
All right, so that is the best laying out of bona fides that I've heard in forever. So we have vetted you as a witness on the topic of radio.
I probably know a thing or two about radio, yeah.
All right, so radio has evolved through the years. Let's talk about a couple things, and I actually don't have it in my notes, but the number one thing here is people always talk about cost. Let's start right there, because I like we were talking before when I bumped into you in the hallway. I knew somebody that did radio, and they were paying a ton of money.
You could buy a house. A year
for
what it takes to advertise on radio.
Yes.
A pretty nice house. Or you could be on a station for next to nothing, very low budget. Radio stations are very good at knowing how many eardrums they have tuning in. And they're going to price accordingly. So a small market station or even just a small station with a very small footprint in a large market may have a very affordable price. And if you're just looking to put content out there and say, as heard on radio, you don't have to be on the blowtorch station that's the 100-watt station with the $100,000 price tag. Now, they can get very pricey. And when somebody says, well, how much is radio going to cost? I hate to quote anything, like what market are you in? What are your goals? Do you want this to be a responsive radio station where you talk about something and people call you immediately as a reaction? Or is this part of a coordinated marketing and branding kind of footprint where you just want radio as part of your brand awareness? Are you going to be able to take that show and then repurpose it and do things to make it effective after the show's over? Because what is radio, right? It's airtime.
Yep.
It's airtime. And after you're done talking, that air is gone.
Yeah.
So in order to continue to utilize the time that you pay for on air, you need to take that and repurpose it in several ways to really make it sticky and continuous marketing.
I like that. So what kind of impact, so you were doing this as an early adopter. What kind of impact has YouTube and social media made then on radio?
It's big. It's big because now more than ever, people can find what they want when they want on their schedule.
Yeah.
Right? So podcasting, YouTube, anything that's on demand, at the push of a button, I can literally find content and media on what I want to listen to right now.
Absolutely.
Right? And radio, you've got to wait around. But I'm not fooling myself into believing that like at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, everybody's rushing out to listen to Peter Rochon's financial radio program like they used to do with the Little Orphan Annie show. Or at 12:30 every day, they're tuning in to hear the rest of the story with Peter Rochon like they did with Paul Harvey.
Oh,
right?
look at that reference. There you go.
I love Paul Harvey.
Me too.
He was great, yeah. But they're still tuning in.
Yeah.
And in particular with talk radio, the listenership is much more loyal. A music station listener, as soon as commercials come on, they're hitting the button, they're finding the next music station.
Or if you don't like that song, you're jumping to whatever.
Right. And actually, that's why behind the scenes, stations coordinate their commercials to all be at same spots on the clock, the bottom and the top of the hour. They all run their commercials in the same times so that if somebody's flipping, they're running into more commercials rather than a station that they're going to stick with because they're playing music and the other one's got commercials.
Yep.
That's not the way that talk radio listeners listen. They are trained to turn on their car, their station is on. They listen through the program, they listen through the commercials, they get back to the program, they listen to more commercials, and they turn their car off having never hit the radio dial. They are very loyal listeners. And so Saturday morning, when you turn your car back on, there's the financial radio show guy, and he's there giving advice and guidance. And it may take you a while to realize, hey, this isn't my regular syndicated radio program. Maybe I flip around now.
Do you, golly, that's interesting. So with one of the questions I was going to ask is, with the rise of digital marketing, but I can see now with what you're saying, how you're taking that content and repurposing.
Absolutely.
So it's like hand in glove almost.
Yeah. No, you should not do one without the other, right? If you've got a radio program, you automatically also have a podcast. What is a podcast? It is a radio show available on demand. You've got the content, you're paying to put it together, you've got the production, you've got the material, just put it out there, which is free or exceedingly affordable depending on what platform and how far you want to get it to go. But distributing that content, that podcast content beyond just the radio station call letters in that one time that people have to catch you or they miss you or they don't, it is exceedingly easy and should be done by everybody who is paying the station, whether it's a $5,000 a week station or a $5 a week station. You should be taking it and repurposing that program. Now, most of the $5,000 a week stations are probably doing part of that for you, but they're also probably doing it on their platform rather than a place where you can confidently drive people to knowing that you are branding yourself by doing so.
I like it. So what about, one question that always comes up with, say, radio is accurately measuring your ROI.
It's tough. It's tough.
Talk to us about that.
It takes time to be able to do that, and you're not going to put one show out there and then immediately see that ROI. It's just not how it works because people need repetition. And radio salespeople will stress to you repetition. You need this much frequency of mentions, and they're not wrong. There was a book, gosh, I wish I remembered the name. It's Thomas something, and I can't remember it. But he talked about how many times people need to hear a message before they react and buy. And it's like the first time they didn't even hear it. The third time they started to notice it. By the 7th time, they're slightly annoyed that they've heard it so much. By about the 15th time, they're wondering if their neighbor has already purchased it. And after the 22nd time, he said a person needs to hear a message 22 times before they're going to react and make a purchase. And so you need that frequency. You may luck out and put a show on and get a call, the very first one, but it's more than likely going to take some time. You're building trust with the audience, and big money moves slow, and trust is built slowly over time. So it's the consistency of being there, but you are also forming a pretty intimate relationship. Right? And you don't think about it on this side of the mic where we are here, but somewhere out there, there's somebody alone with their selves and their thoughts listening to our voice on the radio. And that is beginning to build a relationship of trust over time. So that really is where the return comes, is maybe not in the financial ROI immediately, but give it 6 months, give it 12 months, and people will start coming in and saying some of the things that you've said on the radio back to you.
Yeah, we used to. So I used to be an advisor with my brother, and we would do the market report, the market minute in the morning, the opening and the closing.
Yep.
And God, I love doing it. I love doing the live more. I hated doing the pre-recorded one. But one of the things that would happen is every year the contract would come up for renewal. And every year there would be this debate in the office. But then what would end up happening is, you like, doggone it. No one has ever come in and said, I came because I heard you on the radio.
Right.
But what we would always hear is, oh, you're the guys that do the market report in the morning. It's like, and usually you'd get that. I don't know if the radio station would have those people like, hey,
have you ever had somebody in the grocery store line say, I know your voice?
We did. That was
right.
Yeah.
They've heard you. They've formed that relationship with you. And you're right. Like even the radio station sales staff, they tell their potential clients, like, you're not going to hear somebody say they come in and purchased your product because they heard you on the radio. But they heard you on the radio so much that they went and searched your webpage. And that's how they found you, because they knew where to look for you because they've heard you on the radio. And when somebody is in line behind me in the grocery store and is like, hey, I know your voice from somewhere, that's the signal that this is working.
So how would somebody go about if somebody did want to, I'm going to throw some random questions at you, but if somebody did want to go and get on the radio and they say they wanted to go the blowtorch route, like I've never heard that phrase before, but I love it.
Yeah.
So would one look at just demographics? Would one look at, do you go sports radio channel? Do you go regular talk radio?
Are you going to talk about sports?
No.
Right? So I would go where it is conducive to the discussion. If you're going to throw some sports element into your program, then perhaps a sports station would make sense.
That's a good point.
If you've got, faith, if you're a Christian and you're okay to talk about that, maybe going on a Christian station. But don't be counter to the station's image and their persona and think that it's going to work.
That's a good point.
In my town, there are 2 streets where if you're in the market to buy a car, you're going to those 2 streets, right? They put all of the car dealerships right there together. And you would think, well, I don't want to be next to my competitor. No. That's where people go to buy cars. So even if a new car dealership wants to open up, guess where they're going to open it up? Right next to all the others. And that's the way that your financial show should be. Don't be afraid of the competition. Put it where everybody goes to listen to shows about money.
So if somebody were to, say somebody wanted to start this, what about, what are some of the key things you got to have? Because you got to have content.
You got to have content. Yeah.
Where do you find content?
Well, I mean, if you'd like, give me a call. I've got years worth of show notes and plenty of content, and I still create them on a weekly basis. We've got a catalog and library for that. But really, if you are in this business, you know this business. You know the conversations that you're having. Maybe you've got a presentation that you've done a few too many times ad nauseum, and you think that you're sick of the information. Well, guess what? The person who's coming in to see that hasn't heard it, and so have thousands and thousands of others that could potentially be listening on the radio. So if there is a question that you've heard more than twice in a week from different clients, then there are more people interested in that topic. And you should be talking about on the radio the same kind of conversations, the same kind of things that you're having in one-on-one meetings with clients, because when you have that conversation on the radio, and then they come in and you have some of the same conversation, it's positive reinforcement that you truly believe what you were talking about on the radio, and that furthers that sense of trust in that relationship.
I love it. So what about have you tried different formats like maybe buying a commercial break and doing that instead of a show?
I will take commercials if they're throwing them in for free, or to supplement and complement a standing showtime. But in our industry, like, it is hard to build the trust of, hey, I'm the guy that you want to hand over your life savings to in 30 seconds, right? and further, we also have disclaimers, right? So, 15 of that 30 seconds is telling the person why they shouldn't hand over, every reason why they shouldn't take what you have to say at face value.
You know what? You're right, because when you hear a commercial, I always think of the pharmaceutical commercials too, where they,
if you take this, you're going to die.
Yeah, if you, first it's smiles and butterflies, and then it's like, if you take this drug, and no matter how fast, if you speed it up to get it done quicker, it just sounds scarier.
Right.
So common pitfalls, things that you've seen through the years. Common pitfalls when an advisor wants to start doing radio.
Trying to read a script, like bullet point it. You can have material that you have prepped, that you are prepared to talk about X, Y, and Z topic, but do not sit there and try to read a script word for word. It is a relationship business that we are in. Financial advisory, you have to have some personality show through, right? And you don't want to sound robotic and like you're reading a script. And there is a nationwide financial show that different advisors can sort of buy into and then air on their local stations. And I know that that's what they're doing. And it just, every time I hear it, I'm like, wow, they got another one. They sound so unnatural and they sound so robotic. And I think that is a big mistake.
It sounds that sounds like the equivalent of reading slides.
Right. Or reading a book. One of the top fears is public speaking, and I get that. Like, it's kind of hard to do. Radio does help you take some of the public part out of the speaking, because it's just me and you here talking. It's just that thousands or tens of thousands of people could potentially be eavesdropping in on our conversation. But don't make it so difficult and overthink it. Just have a natural conversation about a topic, by the way, that you should be very well versed in and fluid and comfortable talking about if you're already in this industry.
So what mistakes to avoid? You're thinking about radio, mistakes to avoid.
Not doing some kind of market research, I think, is a big one. Look into the different stations in the market. And there are a number of various outlets where you can kind of quickly survey the marketplace and see where the stations are ranked. The population of the metro area is this many million people. And of that many million people, all that are tuned into radio, 3% of them are tuned into this particular station on average at any given time. Right? And only 0.5% are tuned into this other station. Well, they should be priced accordingly then, right? Yeah. So do a little bit of research on there. Go look at the marketing footprint. Does this station cover the area that you are trying to market to with a clear signal?
I have a really naive question.
Okay.
So I know that, we both have our smartphones are laying around here somewhere, listening to us more than likely because we gave it that kind of permission.
Watching us.
And so I know that with geofencing, you can pick up IP addresses and you can gather this information in our phones. Like I said, when we're scrolling, they're gathering data on us unless you have the one phone where you said no to everything. You probably don't have a single app on there.
Yeah.
But that demographic information that it gets is super, super accurate. How accurate are... There's no IP addresses on your car radios. How accurate are they?
They have a generally good idea, right? It's not as precise. It's not near as precise, and it's not nearly as in-depth and detailed as what they know everything about you on your phone.
Yeah.
You are literally carrying around a data collection device at all. They used to warn us about Big Brother, right? My mom's generation was like, oh, Big Brother, Big Brother. Now we have voluntarily brought Big Brother along everywhere we go. But they do have ways to get some pretty detailed data on what is the average net worth of our listener. Do they have high school or college degrees? Are they married? Do they have kids? Have they bought homes? Because the radio industry wants to know this information. And so for decades, they have been surveying radio listeners. They'll actually send out what are called people meters, is the way that they used to do this. I'm not even sure they have to anymore because of the cell phones. But they used to send out people meters, and they would pay people to wear them around for a week, and they would pick up every radio signal that person encountered.
Get out, that's cool.
Behind the scenes, there are actually things called sub-audible tones. So you and I can hear everything that is being spoken and coming, but you can also lay under a signal a sub-audible tone that is basically it can be picked up and heard with the right kind of equipment that will identify what the source of that sound is.
Interesting.
And so as they walk around with these personal people meters, it's like, okay, that's that station. Oh, that's that station. And again, I'm pretty sure that they're doing that with just the cell phones these days. And they say, they send out the same letter and they say, here's a check for $10. You can cash it if you put this app on your phone, kind of thing.
That is super cool. So, okay, so we talked common pitfalls, mistakes here. What do you see as the future of radio?
I think it stays around. They're fighting, and I know that AM radio is having a little bit more difficulty with the fight. There were vehicles manufactured with no radios in them at all. And then actually the consumer said, no, we still like and want our radios. So now they've come back. But AM in particular, there are more vehicles that have been manufactured without the AM band.
That's so interesting.
That's going to come back too. Yeah. Just, I think out of necessity more than anything else. FM has a clearer signal. AM can travel further. Yeah. So if we do need to get out a true emergency kind of signal, AM is going to be more effective to do so over a broader area. And so I think that AM band is probably going to come back and that radio is here to stay just because in a true emergency kind of situation, you can communicate that way. I mean, we try to communicate with outer space, like through radio waves, right? You can communicate with an audience and they don't have to pay a subscription fee. They just have to have the radio receiver there ready to hear the information.
I love it. What do you, so as you think about things, as it relates to radio and advertising, and from your perspective, both with your experience in radio and your experience as a financial advisor, what are you excited about? What maybe makes you a little nervous?
I think that radio is going to come back to becoming more local. Over the last 20, 30 years, there has been a big move that it is become a corporate conglomerate and basically 2 or 3 owners control all of the airspace. You actually don't need a huge budget or a lot of fancy equipment to broadcast on radio. I've driven around when it's Christmas season, and a single house will say, tune to this station to listen to music that goes with our lights, right? So you can broadcast locally on radio and kind of harness that power. I think that there's going to be a move to come back more to local radio, that this is the news for our community, that here is the footprint that we serve, and here's who we're talking to, people who live right here within 5 to 10 miles of downtown, wherever. I think that the music is going to come back to more, hey, here are the acts that are here locally that you could go see. Here's some of their new music. I see it trending that way. And as far as financial services, I mean, I hope that financial advisors continue to give good, sound advice because people need it. People really desperately need it. The American public is sorely, sorely undereducated on financial matters.
I think that's the crazy irony of right now is that more people have more access to more information, and yet people are more confused because there's so many. Yeah. I mean, do you have a dog?
Yeah.
Okay, so when my kid's dog is over and we're about to feed it something, I'll be like, "Hey Siri, can dogs eat blank?" And then it'll pull information up, and the first one will be like, "Yes, they can," and the second one will be, "No, they can't."
Right.
And it's
so much conflicting information. Yeah. And by the way, like financial information, tax information, legal information, health information. Never take what you hear on radio and go act on it, because it's generic in nature and you don't know if it applies to the specifics of your situation.
That's right.
But to learn the importance of financial awareness and good financial habits and some of the strategies that can be advantageous, and then go do some research and find out when and how they apply to your situation. Radio is a fantastic medium, and that also kind of goes back to an earlier question of what advisors should expect.
Yeah.
They shouldn't go into it expecting that this is a direct call to action. They should be there like so many other sources of advertising these days and do a value-first proposition. People do not just buy because you say, I've got a product these days. They buy because you have provided value to them beforehand. And advisors should look at their radio program as a way to provide that value out of the goodness and kindness and charity of their heart. And guess what? The business will come as a result.
But you got to stick to it a little bit.
You got to stick to it. Yeah, consistency is key.
All right. Anything that's keeping you up at night?
Keeping me up at night. I mean, I've got a 14-year-old. Yeah, I got a dog that barks.
There you go.
Those things keep me up at night. About radio, no, not really. About the financial world, I'm trying to make sure that people are in good shape.
Yep.
And even very pragmatic and successful investors who have built up far more money than their parents could ever have even dreamed of in today's generation. Have no certainty of whether they're truly prepared for decades of unemployment in front of them that they want to be able to enjoy.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, budgeting a paycheck to last to the end of the month is difficult. For a retirement planner, we've got to take a lump sum and make it last 30 or more years. And the responsibility and liability of doing that and turning to somebody and confidently saying you're in good shape to retire is exceedingly difficult.
Yeah.
When you think about taxes and market volatility and inflation and healthcare expenses, like there's a lot to be excited about for retirement. And we've got a generation right now that's excited about it and looking forward to being active and spending money through it. But when you start talking about all those factors, there's a lot to be nervous about retirement.
I got to tell you, I wrote something down. I'm going to steal this. But I'm going to tell you that I'm stealing.
Okay.
You
Borrow
said something fantastic. I guess I'd never put it in that perspective of, you said decades of unemployment. And I've never in my life thought of retirement that way.
And we want to spend money like we still have a paycheck. Yeah. Yep.
You know what? That is a great different way of saying something to really make someone really pause.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, how nervous would you be if you were unemployed for a month or 3 months or a year, right?
Yeah.
We intentionally do that and want to stay that way for decades. And Social Security is there, but that's not covering the expenses for most people.
That's big. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, with that being said, I know I'm glancing over because I'm looking at the clock. I know we got to get you somewhere here.
Yep. Got to run.
You are gonna have to come back. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, indeed.
Thanks for being on the show so much. The case for is radio dead? I think the answer is no.
No, it's not dead.
Absolutely not.
It's alive and well. And if it was dead, there wouldn't be so many people doing it. Right? It's saturated. It's hard to find time on radio for an advisor because people know that it works.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the exclusive neighborhood. If you want to move into the exclusive neighborhood, somebody's got to be selling their house. And right now, they're all full and very few people are selling their house.
That's right.
So, it's not dead. It's alive and well. You just got to find a way to make it work for you.
I love it. With that being said, that was a great closing line. Peter, thank you for being on the show. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in. If you get a chance, I would ask if you have not, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. I actually had this conversation with someone. They're like, are you subscribed? And they're like, well, I don't see where. And I'm like, is this follow thing? And I'm like, yes, just follow the show.
Please.
So do those. The reason you want to do that, whenever we drop a new episode, you get notified immediately. And then also, if you get a chance, I do read the comments. So if there's a topic you would like us to dive into, put it in there. Constructive criticism, put it in there. I'll take a look at it. Negative criticism, heck, I'll take a look at that. That sounds fun. So
can I throw in
yes,
a little call to action for myself?
Love it.
This is a program that is aimed at advisors mostly. Right? If there are advisors out there that have thought about doing radio or podcasts as part, like give me a call and I'll go over this information with you and talk about what that looks like in your market. Would love to have that conversation.
I love it. Hit it in the messages, drop the line, and I'll get you connected. So, Peter, thank you again so much. Everybody else, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.